I believe that if Ukraine joins the European Union, this will be the most important achievement and a crucial step in Ukraine's integration with the West. Okay. So if they can become EU members even during the war with Russia, but then that would be a game changer for Ukraine and for Europe as well.
But you think if the Western allies had said a long time ago to Ukraine, you're not going to be a member of NATO, it's just not realistic, that would have been more helpful in keeping Putin from wanting to go forward?
Many Western politicians said this in the past. Ukraine would never. For example, the Bucharest summit in 2008, we all remember that Ukraine and Georgia were promised membership, then some Western countries opposed, objected to that very idea. But I believe, I would not rule out Ukraine becoming a NATO member one day. But again, it's up to the Ukrainian society, it's up to the Ukrainian political leaders to make that choice. And again, Russia has no veto power over what other countries, also in its immediate neighborhood, which alliances will join, which countries they want to trade with, and what international organizations they want to be part of.
So in your current position, do you ever deal with members of Congress?
Well,
Ukraine. Are there Polish ground troops in Ukraine?
No, there aren't. But Poland, it's no secret that Poland has become the hub for weapons deliveries to Ukraine, and we are very proud of that. And we do believe that, as I've said repeatedly, that Ukraine is now fighting not only for their freedom and for their independence and for their sovereignty, they're also fighting for us. They're also fighting for our values. And of course, we can't engage in a major military confrontation with Russia. We can't technically and legally defend Ukraine because Ukraine is not a NATO country. But we can do and we should do our utmost to help Ukrainians defend themselves and defend us.
Now, Poland is a member of NATO, and under the agreement of NATO, if Poland is attacked, all members of the NATO would defend Poland. Do you think it's actually true that if Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia were attacked, tiny little countries?
I have no doubt also that NATO countries' willingness and readiness to defend also the politics. All the countries on the eastern flank, I do believe, and I'm pretty adamant, as easy for the government, that Article 5 is absolutely sacrosanct.
Okay. And let me ask you about Poland as a weapons facilitator. Your weapons are being delivered over from the United States, I guess, either to Poland or Romania, and then you help facilitate getting them into Ukraine. How do you get them in there?
I'd like to know that.
You don't know. I assume you have secret routes or something.
Actually, I prefer not to know.
Okay. So let me switch for a second and talk about Poland itself. So how many people live in Poland?
38 million.
And the religion is predominantly Catholic?
It's not 93, 95%.
Okay. And
not all of them. Regrettably, not all of them attend church every Sunday.
And the Jewish population was wiped out in World War II, but is there some Jewish population?
Between 5 and 10,000 of Jewish descent.
5 and 10,000?
Yes, living there in Poland.
Okay. So what is the biggest export of Poland?
Apples.
Apples. What's the biggest import?
Energy. Well, yes, energy.
Okay. So not long ago, the Polish government said, well, we have some MiG jets, and why don't we supply these MiG jets, and the U.S. can make up that with some other planes. Why didn't that work?
There was some controversy which arose around that particular issue. I will explain this to you in detail. It was Joseph Borrell, the High Representative of the European Union, who first proposed to deliver those aircraft to Ukraine. I have got the impression that in America there is a perception of those Soviet-made fighter jets they look like those B-52s, the strato fortresses, which are massive walls somewhere in the middle of the desert in Nevada, covered by dust, are usable. No, our mates, the Soviet-made fighter jets, were upgraded a few years ago. They are pretty modern, and they account for 1/3 of our fleet of combat aircraft. This leads me to a very obvious conclusion. We can't rid ourselves of 1/3 of our air capabilities without proper compensation or backfill. And that's why the Polish government came up with the idea of putting those aircraft at the disposal of NATO, or to be more precise, at the disposal of the US government, to transfer them first to the air base in Ramstein in Germany, and then if all NATO countries choose unanimously to transfer these airplanes further to Ukraine, would be fine. Okay.
What was the objection?
The American government decided it was not the brightest idea, and it's still on the table. I mean, it's still a valid proposal. Although on the other hand, we try to understand, of course, the American position, and we say that it would be too escalatory from the point of view of Russia.
The U.S. government has taken the position there should not be a no-fly zone. Do you agree with that? Does the Polish government agree with that?
Yes, because, as I said a few minutes ago, we don't need a military confrontation with Russia. I can only quote Jens Stoltenberg, the NATO Secretary General, who have already said on several occasions that NATO is not at war with Russia, and it won't be. But of course, NATO has also a role in this conflict.
Now, from time to time, what happens if
military power?
I think some Russian missiles have gone into Polish territory or Romanian territory, or not?
There was that missile attack a few weeks ago,
Okay.
which was just about 10 miles from the Polish border. People who lived on the other side of the border, they saw windows in the houses trembling from the blast. So it was, a physical, tangible proof that we are experiencing war just because of the border. So it's troubling, it's disturbing, also for Poles who live not only close to the Ukrainian border, but I said, well, half jokingly to my friends in Poland freak out every time they hear Mr. Putin threatening us with the use of his nuclear arsenal. But it's true that it is, returning, at least mentally, to the times of the Cold War. This is a very painful experience for them as well.
Russians have said they don't like the U.S. supplying these weapons to Ukrainians.
Of course they don't.
But presumably they don't like Poland helping out either. Suppose missiles were to fall on Poland directed from Russia. Would you think that at that point you would have to be in war with Russia and NATO would support you?
President Biden once said, we are going to defend every inch of NATO territory. So that every inch of NATO territory is mostly Poland.
So what is the chance, in your view, of Putin being deposed by people saying, hey, look, this is costing us too much money and aggravation and lives, and it's not worth the effort? Is that
Quite frankly, I don't believe in a coup in the Kremlin, because if you have created that, and Putin has been pretty adamant about that, he has created an ambience of fear and distrust within the walls of the Kremlin. So you can imagine Mr. Shoigu approaching Mr. Lavrov and saying to him, this guy is insane. We have to topple him. And you can expect Mr. Shoigu, tiptoeing into Putin's office and saying to him, Mr. Lavrov told me that he wants to topple you. What should I do about that? So the level of distrust in the Kremlin is so tremendous. I've never been there. I can imagine from what I read and from what I see that it would be very difficult to even envisage such a scenario. social unrest in Moscow, in St. Petersburg, the Russian society feeling the pinch of sanctions.
What happened to sanctions?
Economic crisis, but epic proportions, because this is what we would need to even think about this possible scenario of social upheaval, which would eventually sweep away the current Russian political elites.
There was a theory that as the body bags came back, the Russian mothers would be protesting in the streets, but that doesn't seem to be happening yet. Why do you think not?
Because you can't see those body bags on Russian TV. This is the answer.
And are they sending the body bags back? Because some people say they have crematoriums that are mobile and they're just incinerating these bodies.
We don't have evidence of that, but again, the Russian society now lives in an information bubble. So they believe that this military operation that so far has been successful.
So you think if there is an armistice or a truce and Putin says, look, I really care about the oligarchs. I mean, their yachts need to go back and so forth. Is there any way in the world that you can see the Western allies giving back all the things that have been confiscated by the oligarchs?
The European Union has committed itself to transferring about half a billion euros to Poland as kind of an assistance and in compensation for what we have done already for Ukrainian refugees. $500 million is roughly the worth of one of those yachts owned by Russian oligarchs and confiscated by French and Italian authorities in recent weeks. So this is the scale of assets the Russian oligarchs, close to Putin, still possess in the West. And that's why I said about the necessity to close all those loopholes in the sanctions regime. For example, not all Russian banks have been excluded yet from the SWIFT messaging system. So that, for example, the ruble has strengthened, and the Moscow Stock Exchange has not suffered sufficiently, and as opposed to the expectation of many political leaders in the West.
Your view is that the oligarchs' assets that have been confiscated almost certainly will not be given back, they'll be used for reparations or something like that?
Yes. If this is the decision of the Western political elites, that would be a nice one.
Now, there's Russian currency in Ukraine. Are there Polish ground troops in Ukraine?
No, there aren't. But Poland, it's no secret that Poland has become the hub for weapons deliveries to Ukraine, and we are very proud of that. And we do believe that, as I've said repeatedly, that Ukraine is now fighting not only for their freedom and for their independence and for their sovereignty, they're also fighting for us, they're also fighting for our values. And before we can't engage in a major military confrontation with Russia, we can't technically and legally defend Ukraine, because Ukraine is not a NATO country, but we can do and we should do our utmost to help Ukrainians defend themselves and defend us.
Now, Poland is a member of NATO, and under the agreement of NATO, if Poland is attacked, all members of the NATO would defend Poland. Do you think it's actually true that if Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia were attacked, tiny little countries?
I have no doubt also that NATO countries' willingness and readiness to defend also the politics. All the countries on the eastern flank, I do believe, and I'm pretty adamant, as easy for the government, that Article 5 is absolutely sacrosanct.
Okay. And let me ask you about Poland as a weapons facilitator. Your weapons are being delivered over from the United States, I guess, either to Poland or Romania, and then you help facilitate getting them into Ukraine. How do you get them in there?
I'd like to know that.
You don't know. I assume you have secret routes or something.
Actually, I prefer not to know.
Okay. So let me switch for a second and talk about Poland itself. So how many people live in Poland?
38 million.
And the religion is predominantly Catholic?
It's not 93, 95%.
Okay, and
But not all of them, regrettably, not all of them attend church every Sunday.
and the Jewish population was wiped out in World War II, but is there some Jewish population?
Between 5 and 10,000 people of Jewish descent.
I think 10,000.
Yes, living there in Poland.
Okay, so what is the biggest export of Poland?
Apples.
Apples. What's the biggest import? Energy.
Well, yes, energy.
Okay, so not long ago, the Polish government said, we have some MiG jets, and why don't we supply these MiG jets, and the U.S. can make up that with some other planes. Why didn't that work?
There was some controversy which arose around that particular issue. I will explain this to you in detail. It was Joseph Borrell, the High Representative of the European Union, who first proposed to deliver those aircraft to Ukraine. I have got the impression that in America there is a perception of those Soviet-made fighter jets. They look like those B-52s, the Stratofortresses, which are massive, somewhere in the middle of the desert in Nevada, covered by dust, are usable. No, our MiGs, the Soviet-made fighter jets, were upgraded a few years ago. They are pretty modern, and they account for 1/3 of our fleet of combat aircraft. This leads me to a very obvious conclusion. We can't rid ourselves of 1/3 of our air capabilities without proper compensation or backfill. And that's why the Polish government came up with the idea of putting those aircraft at the disposal of NATO, or to be more precise, at the disposal of the US government, to transfer them first to the air base in Russia, in Germany, and then if all NATO countries choose unanimously to transfer these airplanes further to Ukraine, we'll be fine. Okay.
What was the objection?
The American government decided it was not the brightest idea, and it's still on the table. I mean, it's still a valid proposal. Although, on the other hand, we try to understand, of course, the American position, and we say that it would be too escalatory from the point of view of Russia.
The U.S. government has taken the position there should not be a no-fly zone. Do you agree with that? Does the Polish government agree with that?
Yes, because, as I said a few minutes ago, we don't need a military confrontation with Russia. I can only quote Jens Stoltenberg, the NATO Secretary General, who have already said on several occasions that NATO is not at war with Russia, and it won't be. But of course, NATO has also a role in this conflict.
Now, from time to time,
Scott Nathan of DFC. I just came back from Poland. Ukraine is going to Poland, and on the economic.
Send me an email. I'll give you my call.
Okay.
And we can set